Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X research and professional physicist, and today I'd like to bring to you another one of my articles. This one is entitled Planet X Objects in the Sun's Corona. And figure 1 shows some images. Well, actually it's one image, but it's a composite image, an STO composite image from November 15th, 2017, and it shows a Planet X object, or a stellar core, and this one was caught by Scott, and it's in the sun's corona and it's connecting to the sun. Now these objects, what I call Planet X objects or stellar cores, are not planets. They cannot be planets, because if they were planets they would be vaporized in the sun's corona, which is at a temperature of about 2 million Kelvin. So this object is a star. It's an old star that has gone through the aging process because it reached a point in its life where its energy started dropping. I believe it then went through the red giant and the white dwarf phases, as stars are believed to go through, and so they lose most of their ionizing material and they become not much more than the core of the star, covered with just a small amount of ionizing material that does not emit light. The star does not have enough energy to ionize that material so that it gives off light. So these objects are obviously attracted to the sun. They connect to the sun magnetically, and they draw plasma and energy from the sun, and then they rejuvenate, and eventually they start emitting light once again, and they are observed to have plasma, much like other stars have on their surface, except they are much smaller than they would have been as main sequence stars. So the plasma from the sun's corona actually seems to go out to meet the object, and this object seems to also be enveloped in the sun's corona. And here we see the image from the same time, so it's from November 15th, 2017 at 1709. It's the same timestamp as for this one. And this is the 304 angstrom wavelength, where we see the top of the corona. We don't see the top of the chromosphere. We don't actually see the corona, so we are able to see the connections that these objects make between the sun's chromosphere and themselves. And we can see this is where that object was, where we could see some of the sun's atmosphere going out to meet it, and this is what we see in the 304 angstrom. We see here in large, again we see that same shape of plasma going out to meet the object. Now this image is from November 23rd, 2017. Again we see an object here covered in the sun's corona, seems to go out to envelop it. There seems possibly to be another one here somewhere, and possibly here. There seems to be the shape of the corona there seems to indicate that there may be a solid object there. And we can see here there's possibly another one. There seems to be a spherical object there enveloped in plasma from the sun, and possibly another one there. So often there seems to be quite a few. And here this is the same image where we can see that large object. We can see the sun's corona going out to envelop it, and again here. This one is interesting because we can actually see 3 connections, and in the video that Scott made of this, you can actually see that these were twirling around like tornadoes, and so it's quite a chaotic kind of connection that they make, but there are 3 of them here connecting to this object. So this object is drawing plasma from the sun and it's collecting it, And obviously it's been in the sun's corona for a while now, because it takes time for these objects to collect enough plasma so that they are enveloped in it. Now, the type of connection that they make with the sun is magnetic. The sun's magnetic field, wherever there is some type of connection that pulls on it, it becomes perpendicular to the surface of the sun and seems to open up. And then the sun's plasma will spiral along these magnetic field lines outwards. And that means that the sun develops an area in its corona of lower density. And this area is called a coronal hole. So this is what happens when these objects are still quite far from the sun. What we get is a coronal hole. But when they come very close to the sun, they go into the sun's corona. This connection becomes even stronger and denser, to the point that we see these types of root-like connections, and that dance around, they look like tornadoes. And so we get this connection, so the sun's plasma spirals outwards towards the object. There will possibly be another connection where this object's plasma spirals along the returning magnetic field lines towards the sun. So what we actually get is an exchange of plasma. The stellar core loses the old plasma that it had clinging to the core, and it gains plasma from the sun. In this way, the sun becomes weaker and the stellar core rejuvenates. Now here, these are some images from October 13th, 2017 at 3:09 UTC. And you can see again in this position an object, obviously a solid object with the sun's plasma going around it. So it's one of the ones that have been at the sun's corona for a while and has rejuvenated enough to be covered in some of the same plasma as the sun itself is covered in. And of course, in the 304 image, we can actually see that connection being made. It's a little faint here, but we can see the sun's plasma going out to meet the object there. And in the 304, we can clearly see that connection being made. And we can see that possibly there are other objects that are not as visible, possibly not as rejuvenated as this one, in the sun's corona as well. This one actually opens up, upwards and downwards, as if there is an object there connecting to the sun. And you can see the same connection here. It's fainter, but there's this dark connection which is usually associated with that plasma connection these objects make with the sun. So we see it here in the 211 image as well. We see a thin connection somewhere. It's a bit difficult to see here, but we'll see it in the 171 images. And as you can see, here is the 193, and we can see this connection here. And there may be another one here, because in the 171 we can clearly see a connection, and this rounded shape of the corona indicates that there's very likely to be an object there. And you can see this edge here is quite sharp and rounded. And you can see then in the 304 that connection that's being made with this object. But this object is quite, it's obviously dark and different from this one. And we don't quite see it here. But there definitely seems to be something there. And there seems to be something there as well where this connection is being made. And we can see the connection here. And if we then look at these 171 images, and these are for 1 hour later, and this one 2 hours after that, and you can clearly see there seems to be an object there. It seems to be dancing around a little bit, and it's the type of connection is quite chaotic and violent, because the sun is like an inferno. It's boiling hot, and quite the energy on it is quite high, and of course the corona is at a very high temperature. So there is this type of stormy movement of the sun's plasma, which forms these type of tornado connections with these objects. We can see where the other one was, and where that connection is being made with it. You can see it's even a circular type of connection at this object, because of the sun's plasma that goes out to envelop this object. While these objects look dark, there's no plasma going out yet to envelop them, possibly I believe because they are not as rejuvenated as this object, or they haven't been at the sun's corona as long to have rejuvenated as much as this one. And we can see again there's the object there connecting to the sun's surface, and there we are again, there's the other one there also connecting. And in these images we can again see it. This one seems to now be disconnecting and moving further away from the sun, but we can still faintly see the outline of the sun's corona at the bottom, making the circular shape. And there's the other one also still connecting to the sun, because we can see the connection there. And now these objects that are enveloped in the coronal plasma are ones that have been here for a while, so they've had more time to rejuvenate. They now have coronal plasma surrounding them, which we emit some light, and so we can see them. And of course these are old stars which have gone through the aging process. As I've said, they connect magnetically to the sun and they drain energy from the sun. This also explains why the sun has shown signs of weakening over the years, and I have more details on that in my article 60, the Planet X system and the reacting sun. And these objects seem to be increasing in number, so they will continue to progressively drain energy from the sun. And these are 193 image from October 13th at 11:09, so that's the timestamp for this last image here. And so we can see again what the sun looks like in the different wavelengths. Again, we see this one immersed in the sun's corona, covered by some corona, and these ones are not quite visible, but we see the connections. There's the connection faintly there that they make with the sun. And in the 304 image, of course, that connection is even easier to see. So they make connections with the sun's chromosphere, and we can see these connections here. So there seems to be several objects connecting to the sun at one time, so we've discovered 3 here. Now it's much easier to see the objects at the sun's edge, because we can clearly see these tornado-like plasma connections that they make with the sun. But of course it's likely that these objects are connecting to the sun at other points where it's not as easy to see them, such as on regions of the sun that are facing the detector or the Earth. So if we go by these numbers just at the edge of the sun, there may be 10 to 30 objects, perhaps more, connecting to the sun at the same time. And the fact that here we had 2 that were less rejuvenated than the one at the top, or it seems to be, this means that there are probably newer arrivals arriving in the solar system and arriving at the sun's corona. And thus these objects seem to be continuing to invade and arrive in the solar system. And the sun's core is thus because it's believed to be 1/5 the size of the sun. This would indicate that these objects would be about which we can see the size of these objects. Let's see, I think I have an image lower down. Yeah, so in the Earth scale we can see these objects here, and this one here. From the curvature here at the bottom, I would say this object is at least 10 times larger than the Earth. And because Jupiter is 10 times larger than the Earth, these objects would be at least the size of Jupiter, possibly larger. This one may even be larger. This curvature seems larger there. So this means that if we go by the size of the Sun's core, which is twice the size of Jupiter, and if these objects are the same size as Jupiter, then they would be about 5 times the size of the Sun as main sequence stars. So you can see that these objects actually are possibly cores of stars that were once much larger than the Sun. So in conclusion, the fact that as many as 3 objects can be observed connecting and drawing plasma from the Sun at one time makes it likely that there may be many more objects, from 10 to 30, connecting to the Sun at the same time. The fact that 2 of the objects observed seem to be less rejuvenated than the first object, there is an indication that these objects continue to arrive in the Sun's corona, and there may be now thousands of them in the inner solar system. These objects are much larger than the Sun. They were possibly much larger than the Sun, and at one time. And the 3 observed here seem to be about the same size as Jupiter, which would suggest that they are stellar cores or stellar remnants of stars which were once in their main sequence phase 5 times larger than the Sun. And here's the reference to Article 60. This is Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X physicist. Thank you for watching.